What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dirty Bird Fly Through. And before we get started with today's video, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share it out the video. All the support is greatly appreciated. Today, it's week 3. The Atlanta Falcons head up to Charlotte, head up to Bank of America Stadium, or as I like to call it, Mercedes-Benz North, to play the Carolina Panthers on Sunday at 1 o'clock. We're going to talk all about the game. But very quickly, some news that literally just came down about like an hour or two ago is that Younghoe Koo, and this was inevitable, Younghoe Koo has officially been released by the Atlanta Falcons. Parker Roma has been signed to the official roster, and he will be our kicker going forward. Younghoe Koo has been released. His time in Atlanta has come to an end. And, to be completely honest, it was a necessary thing that was going to be a hard pill to swallow regardless. Because, especially in these past 6 seasons, Younghoe Koo has given us a lot of amazing memories, in a time where we really haven't had any other amazing memories. Younghoe Koo has given us some great moments in wins and losses. He made from an improbable start to his career to starting off at Georgia Southern. Obviously, he was in, I believe, the UFL or the not the UFL or some other secondary spring football league to playing for the Atlanta Falcons and getting that opportunity, and he made the most of it. Some amazing memories along these 6 years. Probably my favorite was just last year versus the Saints when he kicked his career-long 58-yard field goal to give us a walk-off win. He also had plenty of other clutch kicks. He, at one point, was statistically the best kicker in NFL history, even above Justin Tucker. But it's pretty apparent that, starting last season when we had that collapse, that Younghoe Koo was a big part of that. And whether it was an injury, whether it was just something else, maybe he lost the mental strength to that an NFL kicker needs. That's what people don't realize, man. With kicking, with football in every position, it's obviously mental. But with kicking, it is probably one of the most mentally draining positions you have because your role is so unique. You are on the roster to specifically make kicks, and a lot of those kicks could be to win you or lose you games. Could be those very big spots. So for kicking, it's really not so much so your ability. Obviously, in the NFL today, you have to have a leg, and Younghoe Koo I don't ever really think was known for having the leg that a Brandon Aubrey has, but for the longest time, he was able to make kicks. We knew we could rely on him, but recently that has changed, and no matter the amazing memories that you had, we went through with Matt Bryant, no matter how amazing the memories were, it is a position that the leash can only be so long when you start to see failure at the position. We gave Koo another chance to earn his job back in training camp, and he did against Lenny Craig. And then week 1 versus Tampa, he had a very shaky game, and it was obviously capped off by the missed field goal that could have sent it into overtime. And that was really the final nail in the coffin. So, for Younghoe Koo, it was amazing while it lasted. It was some amazing memories. At a personal level, fan level, it sucks to see him go, but it is the best decision this football team can make because I think it is pretty clear after what we saw last night. I think Parker Romo gives us a better chance at the kicking position than Younghoe Koo does at this point. So, best of luck to Younghoe Koo in his future endeavors as always. So, getting into this game and talking about the injury report, and for both teams, definitely is that you're definitely dealing with some injuries. For the Falcons, several injuries that we are looking at. Probably the most notable throughout this entire week has been AJ Terrell and the hamstring injury that he suffered right before halftime last Sunday night in Minnesota. The question was AJ Terrell going to play? I always kind of assumed that AJ was going to end up sitting out this game. just because of how they initially categorized it as week to week, and that was confirmed today by Raheem Morris. AJ Terrell will not be playing Sunday's game, which, listen, it is a it's going to hurt to an extent. It is, because he is your best corner. You're paying him $20 million to go out there and lock down his man, lock down the opposing team's best receiver. But yeah, I do think the little bit that we did see from D. Alford, obviously you always got to take it with a grain of salt, it being D. Alford, but I think what we saw from D. Alford, we saw, I think enough to have a little bit of promise, but you do have other guys on this team also, so is D. Alford necessarily the best option? I really don't know, but he's definitely going to get an opportunity with AJ Terrell being out. Jamal Agnew is once again out, and Casey Washington with a concussion. He was limited all week, but he is out. Kyle Pitts did pop up on the injury report on Thursday with a toe injury, but he practiced fully today, doesn't have a designation. He looks to be good to go. As far as Carolina goes, Patrick Jones and Treshaun Wharton, they are both out. So those are some pretty big losses on the defense side of the ball for them. And Xavier Legette, their first round wide receiver from last year, he has a hamstring injury. He was limited all week. He is questionable for Sunday. I would probably assume that they're going to try and have him go, but if not, that's going to be a very big loss for a Carolina team that, already as it is on offense, you really don't know how deep that talent actually is. So, talking about this game and what this game means, what this game is about, it is a game you got to keep the momentum going. We saw the Falcons, and especially the defensive side of the ball is where I'm talking about this momentum. Last week in Minnesota, we saw this defense put on one of the greatest performances we have seen from a Falcons defense in a single game in recent memory, and really one of the best defensive performances we've seen in a single game in the NFL in several years. Because simply put, having 6 sacks, having 4 turnovers, all your rookies coming out, balling out all at once, all having their, coming out parties on prime time. It's, it doesn't get much better than that. And the chips just, you cannot talk about the chips just falling more perfectly in place than that. So the momentum has to keep going, bottom line. Are we going to see a performance as gifted as we saw in Minnesota? I don't know. I honestly think that the Falcons could have a chance to potentially replicate it, because Carolina has gotten off to obviously a very rough start. Bryce Young has proven that, once again, he can turn the football over. And you're going to have opportunities on defense. So you have to keep the momentum going. And I'm going to talk about it later. I'm going to say it now. This cannot be a letdown spot. It's a division game for Carolina. It's their home opener. At the end of the day, there's always just a general sense of hype about your home opener. So the Falcons, you got to keep the momentum going. You're going to have opportunities to. You got to keep it going. You got to keep applying pressure. You have to keep, for Jeff Ulbrich, calling the defense the way you've been calling it, because it has been working the first 2 weeks, especially last week. And as long as you stick to what you continue to do, you're definitely going to have a very great chance to come out of Charlotte 2-1. Now, talking about Bryce Young and his underwhelming start. After ending the 2024 season playing some of the best football in his career and really garnering a lot of love and getting his flowers from the national media, he had a great game versus Kansas City. He was able to keep that Panthers team in the game in Philadelphia late last year. Obviously, we know how the last week of the 2024 season went, where Bryce Young brought the Panthers into Mercedes-Benz Stadium and they walked us off in overtime. So that's another thing, too. It's a big revenge spot for us and Michael Penix, because Michael Penix remembers getting walked off the last game of the season. He never got to see the ball. And you got to imagine, just kind of like with last week in Minnesota, we saw the Falcons get some revenge from last year. They're going to be looking for, you're always looking to take care of business in the division. And as long as it is not raining in Charlotte, which I believe Sunday, the forecast in Charlotte, North Carolina for the game is going to be perfect weather. So, the Falcons, if it is not raining in Charlotte, that is Mercedes-Benz North. The Falcons go in there and they take care of business. But Bryce Young, after having playing some of the best football of his entire career to end 2024, has started 2025 pretty rocky. Week 1 versus Jacksonville, he had 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. And last week versus Arizona, he had 328 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. But it is worth noting that Arizona basically let the Panthers back into that game. They pretty much took their foot off of the pedal and they let Carolina get back into that game. And they really were, it looked like, trying to hand the Panthers that game. And in the end, they still fell short. Carolina still fell short and could not get the job done in Arizona. But could there be, I think there's probably enough thinking, okay, maybe Bryce is getting it back on track. But he's got to come in to Mercedes-Benz North on Sunday, and he's got to play a Falcons defense that he's not going to recognize. That we have seen this first 2 weeks, it has been a completely different defense than recent years. We're seeing constant pressure. We're seeing either turnovers really close to happening, as the case was in week 1, and then in week 2, we saw the turnovers actually happen. So, when you really look at it, I think at this point in time, Bryce Young has had a really underwhelming start, and this cannot be a get-right game for him. And I don't think it's going to be. I think you're going to continue to see the Falcons bring the pressure. I think this could be another good defensive performance. And I'm also going to be completely honest. I don't really know how many more of these underwhelming starts Bryce Young gets to have until he potentially is headed back to the bench. So, it's a big spot for him on Sunday, but if the Falcons defense shows up and they're able to terrorize Bryce Young, then it could really spell a lot of questions for his future after this game. And he's certainly not getting any help with his O-line injuries because Robert Hunt, their star guard, and Austin Corbett, their center, are both out. So what I smell opportunity, and I smell opportunity to apply some pressure from the interior. We saw last week Rukaroro, Brandon Dorless, they got Zach Harrison. They all got pressure on J.J. McCarthy. He was in hell all night, and that gave him the jitters, and he really wasn't ever able to recover from it. And that's why Minnesota only scored 6 points. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Minnesota is a whole lot tougher than it is playing up in Mercedes-Benz North, playing in Charlotte. So you're gonna have opportunities, and you're gonna have to bring that interior pressure on Sunday with Robert Hunt out. You got to bring a lot of blitzes, because if you're able to do that early and you're able to get Carolina out of it and actually keep your foot on the pedal, which is something Arizona wasn't able to do, this game could get pretty ugly. Let's face it, this game could get pretty ugly if the Falcons just build on their momentum, do what they did last week. This could be a pretty ugly spot. Now, we talked all about how the defense could potentially take advantage of Carolina's weak offense, but I think we got to talk about our offense for a moment, because it really feels like these first 2 weeks. We saw last week, obviously, the running game get going for 219 yards on the ground. We saw Bijan Robinson have a great day. We saw Tyler Algier have a very solid day. But I think we're really still looking for that big offensive breakout game where we see both the passing and the running game going. We see Michael Penix getting the ball to Drake London, him having a 100-yard day. We see a deep pass to Kyle Pitts. We see a deep pass. We see a moon ball to Darnell Mooney. And then obviously we continue to see Bijan doing what he's doing. So could that come Sunday? Now I'm going to say, if the Falcons are able to really shut down Carolina's offense, I think that's going to put you in a much better position to do it. Now, Ajiro Evero came out earlier this week and he gave respect to Michael Penix, gave Michael Penix his flowers. He saw Michael Penix the last week of the 2024 season. He saw what Michael Penix can do with that arm. Drake London nearly went for 200 yards. And that was only Penix's third career game. So he knows what Michael Penix can do. Michael Penix, we have already seen slice up the Panthers defense. So could this be a week that the offense breaks out? Absolutely, it could happen this week. However, I will say, I believe that we're honestly going to see a game plan more similar to the one we saw in Minnesota, where I think it's going to be a priority to get the running game going. Now, I will say, I think when we see the running game get going, when we see, you can already mark down Bijan is going to probably have 100 yards and one or two touchdowns in this game. You can basically mark that down because it happened in both games last year against Carolina. I honestly fully expect it to happen again Sunday. I think the difference is, though, Brian Flores, he was able to really contain our passing offense the entire night. And Brian Flores is maybe the best defensive coach in the entire NFL right now who is not a head coach. Brian Flores is absolutely going to be a head coach again. Ajiro Evero has definitely shown promise, but at the same time, his defense has overall been inconsistent. And they don't have the talent that Minnesota has either. So you combine all that, this could absolutely be a big breakout day for the offense. I definitely think you will see Michael Penix have some better numbers this week. I definitely think that you could see Drake London get the ball more. Kyle Pitts get the ball more. Darnell Mooney's really getting back into the swing of things. So you're going to see, I think, this passing offense take leaps and bounds this week, and you're going to see further improvement there. Obviously, we know that the Falcons are going to run a lot out of the pistol. We got to accept it at this point. I would love to see Zach Robinson, however, build off of that. Love to see him develop unique play actions. If you're gonna run in the pistol, at least show different looks. It's not the fact that the pistol cannot work, but you really have to build off of the pistol. You cannot just be in your basics, and you're gonna have an opportunity to do that this week. So ultimately, the synopsis of this game, what the Falcons have to do is they have to do what they did last year in Charlotte. They have to walk into your trap. They have to take over your trap. Because at the end of the day, this cannot be a letdown spot. This cannot be a spot where the Falcons come in and disappoint. You gotta have this game. You are the better team. You're miles better than this Carolina team. You gotta go in here. You gotta take care of business. You gotta be 2-1. You cannot let the Panthers have an opportunity to win this game late. You're gonna have to take care of business. And really, all that comes down to is continuing to do what you did last week in Minnesota. I will say, with A.J. Terrell being out, could it be tough to do that? Yes, it could. We saw the Falcons do it last week. The Falcons were missing A.J. Terrell all last week, and the Vikings still had Justin Jefferson. I don't think Justin Jefferson had to catch the entire second half. You got to continue to keep that same mentality with the Panthers. So we're going to talk about their star rookie wide receiver in a moment, but you got to keep that mentality. I truly believe if you keep the exact same game plan you went into Minnesota with, you're going to come out of Charlotte 2-1. So you just got to go in there, you got to take care of business, you got to come out 2-1. Now, taking a look around the NFC South for a moment. Obviously, the Panthers are going to be at home versus us, and that is what both of us are going to have our hands full with. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be at home for their home opener. They're going to be wearing their white creamsicle jerseys. They're welcoming the New York Jets in. Justin Fields is not playing. I'm pretty sure Tampa's going to win that game and go to 3-0. That's the reality of it. That's why week 1 was an important game. Tampa, Houston had an opportunity on Monday night. They couldn't come through for us. Tampa is a good team. I fully expect them to be 3-0 after this game, and we're going to have to deal with it. We have another opportunity versus them in December. It is what it is at this point. And then the New Orleans Saints, they're going into Seattle to take on the Seahawks. The Saints have not looked terrible in these losses the first 2 weeks, but they're still one of the worst teams in the NFL. Seattle should win that game. Now, as far as the player to watch for the Falcons, I'm going to throw one out here. I'm not, I think Bijan, we all know that you always got to watch out for Bijan Robinson. I'm going to go with our first round draft pick. I'm going to go with Jalen Walker. I'm going to go with really the hometown boy from Charlotte. Only grew up about, 45 minutes, an hour outside of the city of Charlotte. And the Panthers had him right in their laps in April and absolutely passed up on him for Tet McMillan. Now, I think Tet McMillan could be a great player for them. However, I truly think that the Panthers could look back on that pick saying we really needed to get a defensive playmaker, especially at the linebacker position. And the fact that they let Jalen Walker fall right to us is going to be something that will haunt them, I think, for a long time. And I think Sunday could be the perfect spot for Jalen Walker to have that breakout. You're going to be getting interior pressure, so that's going to free up the lanes and going to really allow Jalen Walker, especially with his versatility, to have opportunities at Bryce Young. I will also say that maybe you see Jalen Walker as a spy a little. Maybe you assign him specifically to take care of Bryce Young. And if that is the case, Jalen Walker, I think, is going to have a big game on Sunday. Now, as far as Carolina, the guy to watch for them is also their first round pick, the guy I just mentioned, Tet McMillan. Because at the end of the day, if the Panthers have a chance to win this game, Tet McMillan is going to have to go off for them. That is just the bottom line. Tet McMillan is going to have a big game. We saw him have it in Arizona last week. He had his first 100-yard game. He's going to have to probably have an even bigger game for the Panthers to really have a chance to win. And honestly, with A.J. Terrell being out, it is a better shot. But that is why the Falcons' real concern is going to have to be shutting down and neutralizing the threat of Tet McMillan. He is that wide receiver that really benefits a guy like Bryce Young who isn't really tall. So, at the end of the day, you have to watch out for Tet McMillan. He's absolutely going to be a part of their game plan, especially if Xavier Legette is out. And you also have to watch out for their running game. Chuba Hubbard can go off at any point in time, but I feel like I have enough confidence in our rushing defense to be able to neutralize that and the threat of Rico Dowdle. So you really got to zero in on Tet McMillan this game. Now, as far as keys to victory go, the number one key to victory is going to have to be containing Bryce Young. Because I will say, as much as I've talked about Bryce in this video, Bryce Young is at his best when he is able to make plays with his legs, I believe. As what we saw last year in Week 18. Bryce was able to make some plays with his legs. He was able to get out of the pocket. And that is what made him look like the second coming of Drew Brees or Russell Wilson. You got to keep Bryce in that pocket. That's why I say Jalen Walker is going to be a guy to look out for. I'm really interested to see how they use him on the perimeter because you got to keep Bryce inside that pocket and allow that interior pressure to get to him all game. Because if you let that interior pressure get to him all game with him only being 5'9", then that's going to create troubles for Carolina off the bat, and it's going to make them very tough to win the game. The second key to victory, and I pretty much already touched on it, you got to shut down Tet McMillan. He is, I truly think, their biggest threat on offense in the passing game right now. He is going to be a guy that they're going to look to get the ball to, and they're looking for him to take a step further after that first 100-yard performance last week. So you got to take care. You got to shut down Tech McMillan. And then the third key to victory, you got to attack Carolina's linebackers. Carolina has a very weak linebacking core, and I think it's absolutely going to be something to where if this offense wants to have a big day, it's because you attack those linebackers. That obviously means Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And I'll say this, Derek Brown is back. So I would expect it's maybe going to be a little tougher to run that ball. But at the same time, we saw the Falcons really gain some momentum last week in Minnesota with that running game. And also, I was looking back to week one. Travis Etienne had a really big game, still with Derek Brown back there. Now, it was his first game. It is week 3. A couple weeks later, things are gelling back in. But you're still going to have a big opportunity. And if you can get past that Carolina front that is actually pretty beaten up in its own right, then this could be one of those days that 50, 60-yard house call. We saw it week 1 on the screen pass, but you're talking about like a 50, 60-yard house call running the football on a rushing touchdown. This could be that day we finally see it from Bijan Robinson. Tyler Algier also. Late in the game, you want to wear the defense down more, finish off that win. Pretty simple. And then Kyle Pitts. This could be a spot for Kyle Pitts, especially with the weakness Carolina has at linebacker. Obviously, Drake London is a focus, of course. We're waiting for him to have that big game. But Kyle Pitts, we've seen the Falcons have an emphasis to get him the ball. He has, I believe, 11 catches these first 2 weeks of the season, and I believe that leads the Falcons in receptions, actually. So you could definitely see the Falcons get the ball to Kyle Pitts a lot in this game. So as far as the final predictions go, what do I think is going to happen? Listen, I think that what you have to realize is this is a game that you have to win. You got to win this game. You're going to have an opportunity to win this game. You're better than this Panthers team. Week 18, they got you when you basically knew your season was over. It's time for some revenge, and the Falcons are going to get that revenge. Give me the Falcons to win. I'm going to say 27-13. I don't think we're going to see the Falcons hold a team 2 straight weeks without a touchdown. I would love to see that. I just don't see that happening, however. But I still think that the Falcons defense is going to come out to play, and I think we're going to see our offense have a better day. I think we're going to see this passing offense get it together. I think we're obviously going to see the Bijan Robinson in that running game do what they do. I think the Falcons, listen, you got to go into Charlotte. You got some momentum. You're going to have Falcons fans in that stadium. I know some that are going to the game on Sunday. I had an opportunity actually to potentially go, but unfortunately, some things back here in Atlanta, personally, they prevented me from being able to make that trip on Sunday. But whoever is going to be at that game in Mercedes-Benz North, repping the red and black, bring the energy, because we're going to have an opportunity to make things really rough for Carolina on their home turf. But it's time for the Falcons to, take care of business. You get to 2-1. That's the way you think about this game. But anyways, appreciate you all for watching. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to share it out, and I will see you all in the next one.